Good morning, Journey Church. We are incredibly grateful to be able to do these online experiences with you, and we have become so grateful for technology over the last 4 months, it seems, and we're just grateful. But I want to be honest with you. When I was going into 2020, I was not thinking that 2020 was going to be what it is, right? I mean, in fact, I had kind of gotten a little bit caught up in like the hype of, 2020 is going to be the year of vision and the year of amazing things. And so like in my mind, I was thinking, 2020 is going to be the best year ever. And to be honest, instead of it being a year of vision, I feel like 2020, it's like a boxer that has sucker punched me from like with this hook and just like hit me in the nose and broke my nose and blacked both my eyes. And like it's just been a year of absolutely taking a step back and saying, are you kidding me? What in the world is going on? I mean, in fact, instead of 2020 being a year of vision for me, 2020 instead has been a year of weird things. Like I got one of those COVID tests this week. Yeah, the COVID-19 test. I went in on Wednesday and had the test done. And this is my experience. If you haven't had it done, you should go have it done. It's a glorious time. I went to get the COVID test done, and in the process of getting it done, I found out this. They really can touch the back of your brain with a cotton swab, because I was sitting there and I go to this the urgent care place to get the test done, and as I go in and I sit down, they take this swab that's like 6 foot long. Really, it's probably like this long. And they say, we are going to insert this through your nostril, and we have to go all the way to the very back, and we're going to have to swab. It's going to be slightly uncomfortable. That is the understatement of a lifetime. You see, what they did is they went up my right nostril first, and as they're going back, I felt like they had reached the front part of my brain, so I pulled back as hard as I could, and I was like, whoa, that is enough. That is far enough. Like, I think your knuckle was in there too. You went deep enough. She said, no, we still had about another inch we have to go. And so she went back in there, and as she gets up, she swabs it, and I like tears are rolling down, like she hit some kind of tear duct or something, because tears are going down both sides of my face. Snot is coming out of my nose at this point, and I was like, thank you, Jesus, I am done with this COVID test. And she's like, no, we got to do the other side. And that side, I have a deviated septum on, and so she begins to go up that side. And all the pain and all the misery, it starts back over, all to get a test on whether or not you have COVID. Who would have ever thought that 2020 was going to be a year that we're going and getting our nose swabbed? But here we are. Have you ever entered into one of those seasons of life where you find yourself just saying, God, why? Maybe that's you today. Maybe you went into 2020 hoping that 2020 was going to be better than 2019, because maybe you went into 2019 thinking it couldn't have been worse than 2018, and it did. And probably come into 2020 and you're like, there's no way that 2020 could be any worse than 2019. And it's like, hold my beer, right? I mean, like I've got this. And so 2020 has been a challenging year for a lot of people. A lot of small business owners are going out of business, and a lot of large businesses are filing for bankruptcy. And we find ourselves kind of saying, God, what happened? Where are you at? My wife, this past Sunday, she did the worship leader moment. In the worship leader moment, she quoted the end of Psalm 44:1, and as she was doing that, she just kind of went through it, and as she was going through it, she explained how Israel just got to this point where they were like, God, where are you? But before you get there, It says this in Psalm 44:1. I want to read this to you because I feel like some of us, we were here coming in to 2020. It says in Psalm 44:1, it says, "We have heard with our ears, O God. Our fathers have told us the deeds you did in their days, in the days of old. You drove out the nations with your hand, but them you planted, you afflicted the people, you cast them out. You did not gain possession of land by their sword, or they did not, nor did their own arm save them, but it was your right hand, your arm, in the light of your countenance, because you favored them. You are my king. O God, command victories for Jacob. Though you will push down our enemies, though your name will trample those who rise up against us, for I will not trust in my bow, nor shall my sword save me, but you have saved us from our enemies, and have put to shame those who hated us. In God we boast all day long. Your name forever, Salah." And I just want to stop right there. Because I feel like we get into those seasons as well, right? Like where we're like, "Hey God, you have been so faithful to us. You have been so kind to us. You have been so good to us. You have done so many things that are so positive for us. So God, let us just praise your holy name in that moment." But then I want you to kind of come back in here. And in verse 9 it says, "But you have cast us off. You've put us to shame. And you do not go with our armies. You make us turn back from the enemy. And those who hate us have taken us. They've taken spoil for themselves. You have given us up like sheep intended for food, and have scattered us among the nations. You sell your people for next to nothing, and are not enriched by selling them. You make us a reproach to our neighbors, a scorn and a derision to those all around us. You make us a byword among the nations, a shaking of the head among the peoples. My dishonor is continually before me, and my shame of my face has covered me, because of the voice of him who approaches and reviles, because of the enemy of the avenger. All this has come upon us, but we have not forgotten you, nor have we dealt falsely with your covenant. Our heart has not turned back, nor have our steps departed." And then it goes in to verses 19 through 26. It says, "But you have severely broken us in the place of jackals, and covered us with the shadow of death. If we had forgotten the name of our Lord, or stretched out our hands to a foreign God, would not God search us out? For He knows the secrets of our heart. Yet for your sake, we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter." And listen to this. Listen to the cry of their heart, because I believe that this is where some of you are today. They cry out and they say this. They say, "Awake. Awake, why do you sleep, O Lord? Arise, do not cast us off forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our affliction and our oppression? For our soul is bowed down to the dust. Our body clings to the ground. Arise for our help and redeem us for your mercy's sake." I honestly believe that is where some are today. I believe that some people today woke up and they're in this position where they're just kind of like, "God, where are you? God, what have you done? Have you forgotten that we are here? Have you forgotten?" I believe that there are some church plants that are like, "God, how are we going to survive this?" I believe that there are some individuals that are kind of like, "God, how am I going to make it through this?" I mean, we almost feel like Job did, because some of us have been very faithful to God. You know, Job was very faithful to God, and Satan went to God and said, "Let me tempt your servant Job, because the only reason why he's faithful is because he's so blessed." And God allowed it. And could you imagine what Job had to be experiencing emotionally and spiritually at the time of the great test? And I believe that there are some of you that are watching, and you are in here, and this is your life. And you're kind of like, "God, where are you at? Because I don't understand what you are doing. I don't understand how I'm going to make it through this." Maybe you're kind of like Habakkuk. In the book of Habakkuk chapter 1, it says in verse 2, it says, "O Lord, how long shall I cry and you will not hear? Even cry out to you violence and you will not save. Why do you show me iniquity and cause me to see trouble? For plundering and violence are before me. There is strife and there is strife and contention arises. Therefore the law is powerful or powerless, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous. Therefore perverse judgment proceeds. Summary. Lord, will you please tell me, what in the world are you doing? You know, it kind of makes me feel a little bit more normal, because Habakkuk, a great prophet, says, God, what's up? Where are you at in this? What are you doing in this? God, what are you doing? I feel like Billy Graham did an amazing job of summarizing this whole thing with Habakkuk. He said it this way. He said, Habakkuk said to the Lord, Lord, tell me what you are doing. And then the Lord responds to Habakkuk this way. And he says, Habakkuk, I'm not going to tell you, because if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. I believe that there are some of you in here today, you're like, God, if you would just tell me what you're doing, I would understand it. Lord, if you would just kind of explain to me the process of your thinking, why you are allowing these things to happen, then maybe I could get it. And God's like, no, you wouldn't. I believe there are some of us that are like, God, come on, just tell us why COVID-19. Why does this thing keep coming back up? Why is our world shutting down? Why is this thing just sweeping across the world? God, what is going on? I believe some of you are like, God, how am I going to make it through these things financially? God, how am I going to make it through these things, through this health situation? Maybe it's your marriage. Your marriage has seen better days, and you're kind of gotten to this point where you're like, God, would you just show me why I'm having so many marital problems? Would you just step in? Would you just move in? I'm going to tell you what I think our problem is. I think that you and I and so many others, we have some trust problems. See, we have misappropriated trust. We put our trust in the wrong thing. You see, we look to Washington and we're like, oh, Washington is going to fix all my problems. No, Washington is not the fix to your problem. So we're like, maybe this politician over here, if I vote for this politician, maybe this politician can fix what I'm feeling. No, that politician is not the fix for your problem. Maybe some of you are like, if I just had a better job, if I had more money, money is not going to fix what you are going through. You see, what you and I have a problem with doing is we put our faith in people and things when we should be putting our faith in God. See, because sometimes God wants to use the problem to build your faith, to supercharge it. You see, in Habakkuk 1:5, God responds to Habakkuk when Habakkuk's like, God, what are you doing? What in the world is going on? And he says this in Habakkuk 1:5, he says, look among the nations and watch. He says, hey, Habakkuk, be utterly astounded. For I will work a work in your days which you would not believe, though I would told to you. He literally tells Habakkuk, hey, I know you want to know, but even if I told you what I was doing, you wouldn't believe it. And there are some of us in here that need to hear that. You're sitting there and you're like, God, I don't understand. I've lost my wife now. I've lost my husband now. My mom's gone now. My dad's gone now. God, what are you doing? And you're just like, there's no way that I'm ever going to get this. You're probably right, but God is doing a work in you. Like, how is He going to do a work in me when I'm broke now? How is He going to do a work in me when I'm struggling now? How is He going to do a work in me when my marriage has crumbled now? How is He going to be able to do this? Listen, you have got to get to a point where you are broken so that God can build you back up. God has a plan for your life. Now, Malachi 3:3, He says this, He sits as a refiner and a purifier of silver. He will purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer to the Lord an offering in righteousness. In 1 Peter 1:6, he says it this way. He says, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials. That the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise and honor and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. You may not understand what you are going through right now. You may not get what you are going through right now, but sometimes Jesus has got to put us in the fire. Sometimes He's got to put the whole nation in the fire to be able to get the nation back to a point where it's going to bring honor and glory to Him. I wanted to kind of look at the purification process for gold as I was preparing this message. And so I began to look at the purification process for gold. And here's the steps. If you were to decide that you were going to purify gold, this is what you would need to do. Step one is this. You would insert the gold scraps in the flux into the crucible. So you would take all the scraps and you would put them into a melting device. And then you would take that melting device and you would put it into the fire. Step two. Then step three, you would take that fire and you would begin to stoke it until that fire reached 1,947.52 degrees, because that is what temperature melts gold. And so then you would remove that crucible from the fire and it would have the gold that's molten. You would then take the molten gold and you would pour it into a mold and you would begin to let it cool. And then you would separate the base materials, the copper, the silver, the iron, the tin, the lead, the mercury, etc., from the gold that would float to the top of the mold by just kind of simply hitting it with a hammer. And then you would insert the gold into a retort and you would dilute it with nitric acid. You then pour the nitric acid off the gold, and all that remains is pure gold. You say, what does that have to do with me? I believe that sometimes God has to allow us to crumble so that He can put us into the fire and melt our souls, so that He could then pour us into a mold that looks like Him and separate all the impure things out of our life. I believe sometimes God has got to get us to a purified state once again so that we can be usable to Him. Habakkuk did not understand it, and even if God would have explained it to him, he still would not have understood it. And there are some of you that you are seeking, you are actively seeking the why to your situation. Let me tell you something, you would not believe the why, even if Jesus sat you down and said, this is why. And I don't know what your what is this morning. I don't know what problem you are facing this morning. But what I do know is there is a God who loves you. And if the Spirit of God lives in you, He will see you through it. In Romans 8:5 it says, for those who live according to the flesh, they set their minds on the things of the flesh. But those who live according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. And what this verse screams to me is we are able to separate the saved from the lost by what they set their minds to. What are you setting your mind to? Who do you depend on to save you? The other day, my daughter and I, we go fishing almost every Friday. We go fishing. And so her and I will put the boat in. We run early in the morning and we go out and typically fish for a couple hours in the morning. And we did. We put in St. Mary's and we ran all the way over to a big structure at the mouth of the jetties, fished the structure, ran out to the jetties, fished at the jetties, caught a bunch of fish. And as we were coming back, we were going to stop on this deep water ledge and we dropped anchor. And as it began to get taut, I realized I didn't really like where the anchor had us positioned. So I was going to pull up the anchor, redo it real quick, put the boat in drive, let Savannah just kind of ease us forward as I'm pulling the anchor in. And as I'm doing that, I realized the anchor is hung. So I knew what to do. I told Savannah to put it in neutral. We let out a little bit of rope, and then I pulled forward to break the anchor free, like you typically do. The only problem is the anchor didn't break free as we were beginning to pull forward. So we did this 2 or 3 different times, 2 or 3 different directions, each time pulling it. But I could literally hear the stress that it was putting on the fiberglass on the front of the boat because it was pulling so hard. And so I realized that there was a good chance that I was probably going to have to cut the anchor line. But I decided to give it one more shot, and we eased forward again, and I let out some anchor rope, which proved to be a mistake. Because as we were going, the current was going so fast that the anchor rope went behind the motor, and about the time I was tying it off to the bow, I felt the line tighten and the boat begin to swing, and I knew what I had done. I knew that I'd made a mistake, and I knew in that moment that we were anchored to the wrong thing. You see, the line had gotten around the motor. I ran to the back and I trimmed the motor up, and about that time the back of the boat spins around really quick, and the back of the boat is now into the current, which is a horrible thing if you don't know, because the water will now come over the back of the boat. So in a moment's time, I was in a situation where I had about a minute that I was going to be able to make a decision on what I knew I had to do. Now, my dad was a commercial fisherman, and I knew instantaneously what we had to do. We always kept a sharp knife on the boat for whenever the anchor would get hung up and we could not break it free. So I ran to the back of the boat with the knife. I hung off the back of the motor, and I'm reaching and I am sawing on the anchor rope and praying that the water does not begin to come into the boat. And eventually I get through it, untangle it from the motor, pull the anchor rope in, fire the motor up, and I looked at Savannah and I said, "Baby, were you scared?" And I'll never forget what my little 9-year-old daughter said. She looked at me and she said, "Daddy, I was very calm on the outside." And I said, "You were what?" She said, "I was very calm on the outside." She said, "You've always told me that whenever something like this happens, don't panic." And I said, "Yes, I have." And she said, "So I wasn't going to panic, but I was scared to death on the inside." She said, "But I was praying, but I knew," and listen to this, she said, "I knew you would save us." She said, "I knew that you would fix it." And I began to think about that and begin to process that in my mind. And let me just tell you what I realized. Sometimes in life, we anchor to the wrong thing. Sometimes we drop anchor and we don't know what's down there. And we get hung up. And all of a sudden, in a moment's time, we are anchored to the wrong thing, and it has gotten around our motor. And Jesus is doing everything in His power to break us free from what has you hung up. But you got to stop fighting Him. You got to stop panicking. You got to let Him begin to work the work in your life that He's trying to complete. You see, because I believe that Jesus is trying to cut you free from addiction. I believe that Jesus is trying to cut you free from your marital problems. I believe that Jesus is trying to cut you free from your financial woes. I believe that Jesus is trying to cut you free from the stress and the anxiety and the other issues that you are battling in life. I believe that Jesus is doing everything in His power to cut you free. But you've got to stop panicking. And you've got to put your faith and your hope and your trust in Him. If my daughter would have been running and climbing all over me and screaming and being emotional, then there's no way that I would have been able to think clearly to be able to fix the problem. And I believe a lot of times we're like, "God, I trust you, but get out of the way. I can fix it on my own. Hey, God, I'll do it. I'll cut myself free." No, you've got to give it all to Him. Because if I have learned one thing in life, it's this: you cannot fix you. You cannot fix you and serve Jesus too. See, Jesus wants to do an incredible work in your life. He wants to bless you. Probably one of the greatest things that I have learned in my 38 years here on this earth is that there is a God that loves me, and there is a God who has set me apart, and there is a God that overall He wants to bless me. But I got to let Him. I got to let the Lord bless me. I got to allow Him to bless me. Probably one of the favorite songs to hear my wife sing is The Blessing. I love it. I love the song. I love listening to it on the radio. I love it whenever people are singing in church. I love when my wife does it. I mean, I'm biased. I love my wife, right? So like when she sings it, I love it. But have you ever stopped and listened to the song? Because I believe in the turmoil, in the crazy, in the wild right now, this is what we need. The lyrics to the song are this: "The Lord bless you and keep you. Make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face towards you and give you peace. Do you know the key to receiving peace? Trust in Him. Faith in Him. It says, may His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. Do you realize right now that God's not only trying to bless you in this season? Do you realize that right now in your life, and what you are going through, and what you are facing, and in your marriage, and in your homes, God not only is looking out for you, He wants to bless you and 1,000 generations behind you. He wants to bless your family, and He wants to bless your children, and He wants to bless your great-grandchildren, and your great-great-grandchildren, and your great-great-great-grandchildren. He wants to come around you and bless you. Let me tell you, His presence wants to go before you. His presence wants to be behind you and beside you and all around you and within you. Because let me tell you something, in the morning and in the evening and in your coming and in your going and your weeping and your rejoicing, He is for you. He is for you. He is for you. He is for you. He's for you sitting on the couch. He is for you sitting in the recliner. He's for you at the beach right now, in the boat right now. He is for you watching this on Sunday at 9 and Sunday at 11. He is for you watching this at 1 and 2 and 3 and now Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. He is for you. He is for you. He is for you. He has not abandoned you. He has not abdicated His throne. He has not left heaven. He has not forgotten about you. He loves you. He is for you. He is for you. He is for you. So no matter what you are facing, allow Him to have it. And go before you and stand beside you and behind you and all around you. Would you pray for me? Father, would you begin to move in this place, in these homes, in these living rooms, in these lives, in these families? God, if they don't know you, Father, I pray that they would comment right now and that they don't know you and they want to follow you, that they want to give their life to you. God, I pray that right now you would begin to move in them and that you would sweep through them. God, I pray for your presence to surround them and go before them and stand beside them and behind them and be all around them. God, would you move and bless their children and their great-grandchildren? And God, would you bless their homes? God, would you be the blessing for them? God, we know that the trials are hard. The tribulations are hard. God, but we know that you are going to go before us. And God, we thank you for the blessing and the blessing of our lives in Jesus' name.